Good morning, everybody. Haircut. I'm sure all of you have now had haircuts. It's a gradual transition back to normal, which is marvellous, although not too normal with no drinks and no magazines in the hairdressers and them all taking this very seriously, which obviously we need to as well. For those of you, there's a lot of people on the clinic today that haven't been on our clinics before. All of our clinics, and there's now about, oh my gosh, probably 15, 16, I think, on our YouTube channel. So if you look up YouTube, go to Right Directions, you can find all of our previous clinics. One of our managers we work with said he'd watched them all recently and he said they were very, very informative. So please go back, loads and loads of information for you if you haven't seen them already. So today what we're going to cover, obviously we're going to cover what the government have announced this week and the specific guidance related to our sector. We're also going to go through bits about what we've seen and heard from people reopening and other bits of guidance. And then obviously we're going to go straight into questions, and that's probably going to take up most of the session today. And then finally, what we thought we would tell you is when we've got what clinics we've got coming up. We will have another clinic on Monday for more questions coming in from the industry. And then what we decided to do was not do one on Monday the 27th. We'd leave it till everybody to open a few days. And then people could come back if they've got any more questions or queries, or if we've heard anything or any good ideas, best practice, etc. And also for the home nations, we appreciate that they're all opening on different timelines. So we will keep those guys in the loop as well. So without, I'm going to hand you over to Ian, who's hot and ready to go.
I don't know about hot, certainly ready to go, and fortunately you won't have to listen to too many more of these, and hopefully we'll be back to be open.
All right.
If we could just go back a page.
I was trying to mute me.
So we got the great news last week that we are finally going to be allowed to open. Lido's obviously got the nod to open this Saturday, great long notice, and from the 25th we are able to reopen most of our facilities. There's not everything, and we'll just detail those in a minute. The important thing is that the real hard work starts now. I don't think I can emphasize enough that we have to take this seriously. You are under law required to do detailed risk assessments to bring down this risk of viral transmission within your site to as low as practically possible. If you don't, and we don't have detailed risk assessments with practical and reasonable control measures in place, you, like any other health and safety issue, will fall under the law if you get an outbreak in your site. Sadly, in the last few days, we're learning that not only Leicester is locked down, but over 100 other locations, including places of work, have been identified as potential outbreaks. And the one yesterday on the farm, where 78 workers on that farm have all been diagnosed with coronavirus, gives an indication of what might happen to your facilities if the local enforcing agencies find that your measures haven't been appropriate and you've been the source of a major outbreak. So we do have to treat this seriously, and we have to get this right. We've now got 12 days in which to get this right and to focus completely on making sure our risk assessments and control measures are appropriate to our facilities to get back open safely, and for you to put that sign on the front door saying that you are COVID secure and that you believe it. Okay, so we were told we were going to get match fit. As I said earlier, outdoor sports, team sports could restart, water parks and Lido's, and some of the other outdoor facilities could reopen from Saturday. And then the good news for us, the 25th of July, other indoor facilities can open, which includes clearly gyms, dance studios, sports halls, swimming pools, and climbing facilities, trampoline parks, ice rinks. Saunas, steam rooms and soft play sadly must stay closed for the time being due to the increased risk of transmission in those environments, and clearly we'll wait to see when further guidance comes out. Okay, next slide please. There are some other announcements during the week. Temporary VAT cut on 5% on hospitality, the Eat Out to Help Out discount vouchers for those facilities that offer catering outlets. That might have some benefit for you. And the 1K bonus for employers who, once they've brought staff back off furlough and continue to employ them up until the end of January, will be into £1,000 bonus per member of staff that you've retained who had been furloughed. So that is certainly a benefit which hopefully you'll build into your cash flow. Sadly, it doesn't come up front, but clearly they need to know that you're still in business and employing people before you get that bonus for retaining staff. And the Kickstart scheme to create subsidised jobs for young people, again, may be of benefit for you. And they announced that beauty salons can reopen as from today. Maybe I'll pop out later. Guidance for providers of grassroots sports and gyms, which is ours, came out today. I think it is vital that not only do you listen to us and look at our clinics, but that you, in producing your own risk assessments and control measures, read and understand this guidance. We've got a little bit more to say on the guidance as we go through, but it is vital you look at it. It's also vital, particularly where you've got catering, you look at the hospitality sector guidance. You've got offices, look at the workplace guidance. So it's not just this, but it's important that you look at all the guidance streams that link to what you are delivering within your facility. And then there's the recreational team sport framework as well that came out. So again, it might be worth looking at because some of you offer recreational sports, particularly outdoors, for other people that hire you. And as we said earlier, this clearly applies to England. Across the UK, there are other deadline dates being set or times when they're hoping it might be. So we know Scotland won't be before the end of July. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. So what we're going to emphasise today are the points really that jump out from the guidance. What we're quite pleased, delighted that they've either listened to our clinics, but most of the issues that we've been talking about over the last 6-8 weeks have been included within the guidance. There aren't any major surprises in there of things we haven't already covered. So again, refer back to our previous clinics. But I think some of the big points that come out were as follows. Attendance to be encouraged to arrive in sports kit. This is all to do with trying to get people to avoid needing to use changing rooms, although it's been recognised that clearly for people with disabilities or additional needs, their changing facilities should be available. And also it's likely to be needed after swimming. So there is some room for flexibility in there. It's a recommendation. It should be as far as possible avoided, but you will need to make your own decisions on how you manage those. Steps should be taken to avoid people needing to raise their voice unduly. So therefore, when you've got classes or within your gym, if you've got background music, it should be background music. Class participants, instructors should not have to raise their voice or move closer to someone closer than 2 meters to be able to be heard by the other people. And that for your instructors at the front of a class, they should be using amplification rather than shouting to inform their clients of what they're expecting them to do. Just remember, there is more and more evidence coming out that this is an airborne virus, that the aerosol, not only the droplets, has the potential for transmitting this virus. And it's vital that we listen and take heed of what's being said within this. And where people are exercising vigorously, the greater the distance of transmission, the greater the amount of aerosol that will be produced. And as I think I've emphasised in previous clinics, please, for the sake of your instructors, consider the distance at the front. 2 meters may not be sufficient for your instructor in the front, and you might like to at least leave a gap in front of them to reduce the risk for your instructors. Booking systems, I think this is absolutely vital. You need to be able to control the numbers coming in and out. It's emphasised in the guidance. We've been talking about it from day one on our clinics, and it is embedded so strongly in the guidance. You must not have a position where you're going to end up having difficulties in controlling the numbers of people that come into your facility. So I'm not sure how you manage that through online systems, through telephone, but you do need to be able to manage the numbers attending at any one time so that you can control it. We don't want images of centres shortly after they open up, similar to Soho. We know this weekend the TV cameras were out looking at the few Lidos that were open. We don't want any of you to be picked out by TV and highlighted as being people who haven't managed to put the controls in place to ensure secure environments within your facilities. So heed that. Next slide, please. We're moving you. Right, thank you. Now this is the one, again, there was clear issues in here about allowing gaps between classes. Now we think that probably applies to all sessions where things are going to be touched, that there should be gaps between sessions and classes to allow for cleaning to take place, but also to allow the air environment to change slightly so that you're not building up a concentration of aerosol from one class to the next. Visible tape should be put around pieces of equipment that are being isolated to denote social distance. Create social distancing champions. That's a recommendation. We think it's important that somebody should lead, but also that you should, through the training of your staff as you bring them back, encourage everybody to be lead officers on this, to enable everybody to call each other out, to report issues where social distancing isn't occurring. I watched yesterday, had to go and click and collect at a supermarket that we've championed actually on these clinics in the past as being someone who's done things really well. And I watched 3 members of staff all huddling together around a little click and collect desk that they'd set up outside, and they had completely forgotten social distancing still applied to them and the distance between staff. So please make sure you enable your staff to call each other out and to remind each other they're not being difficult, but they're protecting themselves, they're protecting you, and they're protecting the NHS by having the power to say, whoa, please, let's remember the distancing to protect everybody. Hosting larger groups outside is covered in the guidance. We think it is a bit confused, and we're looking to try and get some more guidance off environmental health officers to see what the interpretation of that really means. And once we get that, we'll come back to you. Limiting the numbers of classes. This will be worked out by looking at your occupancy, which I'll come on to in a minute, but is a 2-part issue. And not only involves the ventilation capacity in the room, but also still involves your capabilities of creating that 2-meter distancing. And that's for people queuing, coming in and leaving. So that's the additional reason why you need to leave gaps between sessions, so you don't end up with double the number of people in your facility and congestion points and crossover points. And it's important to recognise within the guidance that encouraging customers as well as you to make sure equipment is clean. So we can put some reliance on customers so long as you've provided the signage, the instruction and the equipment for them to clean equipment in between use of it, particularly important in gyms and for studio classes. So that's a good point. Can I just, somebody's not muted and there's music feeding back. If everyone could just check they're muted, please, for everybody listening. If we could move on to the next slide. This next slide, once we get to it, is probably one of the ones we've been talking about, but didn't know how they were going to actually deliver this and what they were going to say about it. It's not straightforward. It is a 2-part exercise. You will have a maximum capacity that you can have in your building if you can calculate this. It's talking about all usable spaces, so your gym, your studio, changing rooms. It's not talking about corridor space, whereby you can calculate the maximum number of people you've got in your building, assuming you've got a basic rate of air exchange within your building. And we recommend you might need or will need the advice of a heating and ventilation company to confirm whether you've got that sort of turnover. Opening doors and windows frequently will help that. But as I said, this is a two-part exercise. You will be able to calculate the maximum number of people that you can have in your building based on this calculation. I suppose it's a tip to the fact we're no longer in Europe, that they chose feet and inches rather than meters. So we end up with this funny calculation, but it's one that you do have to make. You then have to look at your capacity based on how you achieve 2 meter social distancing within your facility. And it's the lower of the two numbers which will be your capacity. It will not be the higher. Sorry that it's complicated. We're still trying to get our head around it, but it is important that you understand you can't just do the one calculation and assume that is your capacity. Just to reiterate as well, they weren't particularly helpful. The 20 L/S/P means 20 litres per square foot per person. So they would have been helpful in the guidance if they'd have actually put that, but that's what those two mean. So we need to take that on board when we're looking at that. And as I said, it may well be you need external support to be able to come up with those calculations. Clearly, for some people, if you haven't got that, you might need to consider other mitigating ways of dealing with it, introducing more fresh air or extracting more air to drag more fresh air in. So I think it's important also to ensure within the guidance it talked not only about training staff, but for those who perhaps rely on volunteers, you need to consider making sure they also receive the same level of training and understanding about 2 meter distancing, washing their hands, and how this virus can be translated. Sorry, I've just been corrected about it's 20 litres per second per person. So we also need to consider other protective characteristics. So if you have people with hearing problems who perhaps need to lean closer to you, you need to make sure issues like hearing loops work, and also consider how visual impairment, the signage you're putting up, are they going to be able to see it, where you're locating stuff, and how you're ensuring that you're open and equitable to all people using you. Okay, next slide, please. This is just a refresher, and I still think there is an awful lot of confusion out there about this. The 2 meter distancing still applies. The information that came out 2 weeks ago now was 1 meter plus, and the 1 meter plus means you've got mitigating circumstances in place. As we've had this conversation before, the World Health Organization, even this guidance does not advocate people exercising wearing face masks. So therefore, to reduce would need far more mitigation in place, such as screens between groups, which is going to need more cleaning. And therefore your calculations do have to be based on that 2 meter distancing, and to ensure ability for people to move between equipment as well on top of that. This change is not an excuse to cram more people in, to cram more equipment in. If it jeopardizes your ability to put that sign on the door, to sign it to say you are COVID secure, you have to mean it. If you don't, you will suffer the consequences, either by being closed down or worse still, being taken to court. So please make sure you treat this part of it really seriously. Next slide, please. Again, there's been all sorts of other information coming out. There's a range of information continually being put out by governing bodies together with some of the other industry bodies. It's important you keep up to date with that, and you look for these for reference to do with certain parts. I think PUTAG updated their technical guidance on some of the disinfection methods, including a wider range of disinfection media as to the criteria and the parameters for those. So you might want to take a look at those if you've got a pool and you've got anything other than sodium hypochlorite, because there are some changes in there. Okay, Next slide, please. So, are you ready? We know from the weekend, and I think it was a bit unfair on them that they got 2 days notice, but only 4 Lidos opened this Saturday out of a possible 100 plus. I can fully understand why some people haven't taken the decisions on sustainability grounds to take preemptive action, because we didn't know it was going to be announced. But I think it's important that we learn lessons, and that for the rest of our facilities we are ready, and that we've taken all issues into account. So hopefully by now you've already thought through your signage and marketing material being in place. Has contact been made with your members and customers? Something we've back in our clinics on customer care and customer information were very much harping on, that it was important to keep your customers informed if you're going to maintain them, and to send out clear, concise information about what to expect when they come back. I think is going to be vital in helping you put those controls in place, but also making them feel part of the solution. If they dearly love their facilities, which I'm sure 99% of your patronage do, and they want to come back in, the more you can give them confidence, the greater the chance is that you're going to get them back. Have you done a pre-opening clean? This is as much to set a new standard of benchmark than it is anything to do with the virus, because if no one's been in there, there can't be virus around. But it's important that you demonstrate to customers that what they come back into is what you're going to maintain, and I think that's really important. For those with pools, have you got chemicals? Are they up to date? Have you got orders put in so that you're going to be able to maintain the new levels of usage? Have your drink supplies and food supplies for catering outlets been updated? Is your IT ready? Is your booking systems and online payment systems going to be able to cope? And have your websites been updated with that vital customer information that's going to be needed? Just also to check, have all your battery operated equipment, is it going to function? Some of the handheld PDQs are battery operated, other devices and items within your centre are, and we've been shut for a long time now, and you need to go through and ensure it's going to work when you need it to work. And have activities and programs and staff rotas been agreed? I think the programming part links back to the point we were making about sessions, to make sure that your programming is based around making sure you stay within your control limits without causing you problems. And it's a message we've been trying to put out all along, and we know from talking to those jurisdictions that have been able to open up, i.e. Ireland and also the Channel Islands, the message from them was to take baby steps, to start small and to build up towards where your capacities are. Don't assume for 1 minute that you're going to go back to full occupancy. Your revised occupancies on day one. And the other thing we do think is really important in terms of staff rotas, that on that first week you have managers on site all the time, overseeing, making sure you can amend your controls, identifying your pinch points and taking corrective action against your controls to get this right. It isn't easy. It needs oversight. It needs you to regularly review your controls and make sure they're functioning, and to be able to evidence that if you did sadly have an outbreak linked to your facility. Again, are your pools ready? Are your temperatures back up? Are you bringing them up as per PUTAG guidance, and making sure your disinfection settings are set at the current correct guidance levels? And what have you done about unfurloughing staff? You can bring staff back to train them and deliver competency assessment training without unfurloughing them. But at some point you are going to need to unfurlough them. So communicating with them and enabling that process to work smoothly towards the 25th of July. If you haven't already started, you should seriously be thinking about getting that underway. Training. What additional training are you giving to staff? I would suggest that you probably need to do a complete reinduction, including evacuation training, first aid training, together with training in the new controls that you have in place and you expect people to adhere to. Also, you might want to look at a general COVID awareness sessions so people understand what 20 seconds of hand washing really means. It sounds simple, it sounds perhaps patronising, but unfortunately I think the government messaging has stopped too soon around that. It is still out there. We are likely to still get second localised waves, and that is one of the key controls that we need to keep drumming home to staff and to our customers to protect themselves and us. And lastly, have you got all your statutory inspections updated? Are things like your lifts capable of going to be able to be used? Because if they haven't been inspected, you aren't going to be able to allow them to be used until you get that done. And there's a vast array of other things that we dealt with under the technical clinic that we did. Okay, I think it's probably over to Caroline now. Or is there one more slide?
It's over to me, Ian. Thank you ever so much, Ian. Just a quick update. I think we've had probably, about 2,500 people now register and do our online training. It's the first time we've done it, but it's a good session. It's a bit of fun and some photos and stuff in it as well. So by all means, let us know if you want to sign up your staff. It will save you quite a lot of time. It's all about understanding COVID, how to treat customers, how to behave in front of customers, what to look out for, and cleaning and hygiene. It will save you quite a lot of time going through the basics and leave you the opportunity to then train them on your new processes. So we've kept it extremely good value. So that we know that we can give back to you guys. So please consider that. There's the email there if you want to get your staff booked on, and you do get a certificate straight away if you're a good certificate. Okay. We're also, just to let you know, we're starting to work with an organisation called Tiller. You may get contacted by your local authority. It's going out to local authorities as an online assessment tool for them to ensure that their facilities have everything in place, risk assessments, cleaning, hygiene, etc., etc. So that is on its way, and you may find that you get a link to that from your local authority. And there's quite a few that have already signed up for that. Just a quick bit on updates where we're at. Quite a lot of this has been on for a while, but just to keep you in the loop, you can still get mobilisation action plan and pandemic procedures from us if you're clients. If you have Quest, obviously our risk assessments are available on the platform. We've still got organisations who haven't started their risk assessments yet, so that's really, really important that you start doing those. And for those of you who are a bit nervous and a bit wary about what you're doing, let us know if you want us to come and have a walk around the building, check your records, check what you've done, check your risk assessments. Please let us know. That they're probably invaluable to have a second outside pair of eyes that doesn't know your buildings inside and out and can do it from a customer's perspective as well as from a health and safety and security perspective. So have a look, obviously have a look on the web pages for all of our COVID things. We will be adding a COVID-19 induction record on there this week for you to be able to use and adapt. It will be in Word so you can change it. So you can re-induct your staff when they come back in. We don't want you to be spending weeks and weeks training all of your staff over and over again on old stuff. It's just about the new changes and what they need to do and how they need to behave. And I think those are probably the main things. For those of you, we've also who do swimming lessons, we've written the swimming risk assessments for swimming lessons for the STA. They're available on the STA website. Probably shouldn't say this, but even if you're a Swim England user or you do your own thing, there's an awful lot of good stuff in it. We've had some senior managers and swimming teachers help with those, so there's some really practical good stuff in them. So I think that's it. Final thing, we find out this week, what's happening with Quest. It looks like it's going to be relaunched in August with a definite slant to back to business, fit for business, with lots of COVID elements in it. So we will be updating people in the next week or so at the clinics on what the changes to Quest will be. As always, we'll never leave this slide out. Don't forget spacing, sanitising, signage and smiling. I think probably the more and more important for you guys is, because you have been working on your spacing and your signage and your sanitising, is how you're training your staff to look out for customers, look out for each other, and make sure that they're welcoming people back in. There's still an awful lot of scared customers out there. So we really do need to train our staff to make sure that they're delivering. My son works in a butcher's shop, sort of farm shop, and there's a nice big poster on the door that says, "We're down to 1 metre," and in you go, and all the staff are all talking to each other, and you can see there's a lot of customers who are coming in their masks and gloves and are just walking back out again. So please, we do need to make sure that we're doing this right. Now we're over to questions, and I'm sure we've got plenty. Jill, have we got first question?
If you just turn to
we're going to do the
slide,
questions first.
Shall we do the ones which were already in?
Okay, so these are the questions that have come in this week. We thought we'd do these first. Sorry, my fault, forgot that. When we reopen, can our cafe participate in the Eat Out to help out? We believe you can. There is good guidance that's come out this week on the government website. You can register. You just need to make sure that you fill in the information on the scheme. We will be sending this out as a PowerPoint, so you'll be able to open the links in that. Obviously, you can't open the links if you look at it as a YouTube video, but you can when you get this through on the email. Next question we've had: have ventilation rates been confirmed for each area, as different bodies state different rates, or just say more ventilation? I think Ian's pretty much nailed this. I don't think this one's going to go away, is it, Ian?
No, I think this is going to be the difficult one for everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think the overall occupancy within your building is set on the totality of the usable area. You've then got to look as to whether that's higher or lower against what 22 metre social distancing means to come to your capacities. Clearly they are more and more worried about it being an airborne virus, which is in the aerosol. I don't think the evidence is complete yet as to whether it's dose related, but we do have to treat it seriously. So where you are concerned, we suggest you do get some external advice.
Well, we had 10 of the Right Directions team. We go through every Sunday night, we go through and all chat about what we need to add. And none of us have spotted 20 litres per second. So loads of us have not noticed that. So humble apologies. We're going for 20 litres second per, just for a bit of...
No, well, it's second. I think it's per person. The P is person.
It's person. Okay, yeah. So
the per is the slash.
We know what we mean.
Yeah.
Okay, right, next question. It's looking like government may be changing their stance on face coverings. What are our thoughts?
Again, do you want me to take that? I think I think it was confirmed again yesterday that they aren't going to make it mandatory, but they are in England advising people to wear face coverings in shops, and certainly we know in Scotland it's mandatory, and I'm not sure I think Wales might be the same. Clearly, shops, I don't think they can really confirm 2 metre social distancing, and there are different types of shops, and some of which have no air handling, and I think that's where this is coming from, to try and help people be able to move around more easily within shops. We know from the World Health Organization and also from this actual document, our document for us, it's saying all forms of face covering may restrict breathing efficiency and should not be used during exercise except on specific advice from a physician. So I think we shouldn't be encouraging it when people are actually taking part in exercise. If you've got a small facility and people are having to move closely around the facility, you might think it's important to advise people that during those bits of the buildings you might want to use those if it helps mitigate some of the other issues. But at the moment it doesn't look like our government are going to make it mandatory. To some extent I wish they would regarding shops, because then everyone would know where they are.
Ian, just on face masks, and we might as well cover this off now. We've had a question in on the chat. Yeah. We've had a few questions regarding the guidance in the RLSS document regarding FFP2 masks or a surgical mask for the management of first aid incidents.
Yeah.
We are getting some resistance to using the FFP2 mask, which appears to be the first choice from the guidance and appear to be more resilient in our conditions within the leisure setting. Is there any guidance you can offer?
I think other than following the guidance, FFP2 masks are meant to be used in health settings. They're meant to be able to take out the aerosol and clearly droplets, which are the major source. You are going to be having to work very closely. I'm not sure what the resistance is that you're getting. Is it that people don't think they're adequate, or is it that they don't want to wear it? Or they think it should be reserved for the health service? But the guidance is fairly clear, and we suggest that you follow that.
Thank you, Ian.
Okay. Next question. I can see the pool bather load has been set at 3 square metres by the government, but Swim England advised 6 square metres. I assume the government advice is the overarching requirement to follow, but why the change? Just interested to know, as it's very helpful for operators financially, but will be a challenge to manage operationally. Ian, do you want to go through that one?
Yeah, I mean, 3 metres was the existing guidance, of which very, very few people ever went anywhere near that number. We aren't sure where it comes. We know Swim England have reiterated their 6 metres, and I think are potentially going back to government to seek advice why that went in. They believed it's an error, and there's the statement that got put out by Swim England. If you are going to confirm 2 metre social distancing, it can't be achieved within 3 square metres. So therefore, from a purely practical viewpoint, and one that would stand up against environmental health, I think the 6 metres is more realistic. And I'm sure we're likely to see a update or clarification over that in the near future. And interestingly, the guidance does say to refer to NGB advice. So perhaps it's an error.
Yeah. And obviously we've been recommending all the way through to start off with baby steps. Yeah. And then we can build from there. So we definitely need to be working to at least 6, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay. The next question we've had this week is, I'd like to understand the foam pit limitations, possible precautions and control measures. And our response is that foam pits are really difficult to keep clean. If someone were infected, the pits could easily harbour the virus. We need to bear in mind that the government guidance states the only means of minimising contact transmission is for cleaning equipment after every user. This clearly isn't possible for foam pits.
I think, if I can just jump in there, Caroline, I think we need to look at foam pits in a similar vein as ball pits. The government have clearly put in the guidance that ball pits can't open within the soft play area. I do know that there are people out there who are looking at alternatives, and they are looking at covering the foam pits with either airbags. I was actually on LinkedIn this morning, and there is a company out there, and we're not promoting this company because we don't know the product, but they're saying that they've actually manufactured material and a cover which will go over foam pits, which is better than airbags. So that may be worth looking at, but we do think that it will be hard to keep your foam pits open in your facilities.
Okay, thanks, Jill. Okay, so we're on to the rest of the questions now.
Yeah. Okay, Ian. I have a question on capacities. When calculating new capacities, how do we correlate children under 11 years of age who are not subject to social distancing measures?
I think within our facilities, we still need to consider the 2 metre distancing. That, I believe, is applicable in schools. It's not general use outside, and you should be including them in your 2 metre calculations when you're looking at each area within your building.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Cleaning regimes. There's been a couple of questions come in from info on cleaning regimes about whether organisations and activities should be closed in between sessions, or whether it's okay to clean as they go, and particularly in some facilities they might close down a piece of equipment and clean it whilst it's still open, and other people are saying, is it better to actually close after, say, a class or a session and then do a clean? What's our thoughts on that, Ian?
I think go back the advice where they are suggesting that activities should be organised in sessions and allow time for changeover of people between. Those are the times I would suggest that you look to do your cleaning. We know from other sites that have reopened in Jersey and Guernsey that they're saying they are the critical times when the whole management team go and get involved. I think they're knackered already. But it's something we do have to treat seriously. It's how much you get the customers involved, how much you get customers to bring their own equipment in to reduce that need, that I think is where you're going to get systems that work and work consistently.
I think just one tip, I was chatting to a manager from Jersey who's obviously been open for a few weeks. She just said she had a tip for everybody. She said, have a think about what instructors are using in terms of equipment. She's got a Pilates instructor that's determined to use mats, balls, small hand weights, blocks, stretch bands, and cleaning all of those in a 15-minute window after a class is virtually impossible. So if you do body pump classes, anything like that, there's plenty of routines that don't necessarily need to use all of the weights and all of the kit. So it's worth having a chat with any of your instructors or coaches of any classes or sporting activities, just to have a think about what equipment they actually need, and maybe they can do classes with less equipment. I thought that was a really good tip.
Thank you, Caroline. I'll take the next question. It's around inflatables. Does anyone have clarity on whether inflatables are able to be opened, or do these fall under soft play? It's our understanding that they can be opened. They did open inflatable water parks a couple of weeks ago, and it hasn't been named in the soft play guidance, which is saying they need to be closed. So it is our understanding that inflatables can remain open. Obviously, the key there is you're going to be your cleaning regime, and maybe that is one area where you will need to close down those areas and have a deep clean. Again, in all of our sessions, we have advocated about keeping the customer clean. And getting them to help. So in all of these instances that we're talking about, from fitness classes to pool, to gym, to trampoline areas, it is about also educating the customer and getting them to be clean, using the sanitising fluids that you're going to provide, and also wipes, so that they can wipe down the equipment with you.
For those of you who are new to our clinics, we've been banging on in every single clinic the importance of customer perception, and we mustn't forget how we're going to be looking for the first few weeks of opening. So if we go overboard, that's not a problem. If we are being seen to clean in between sessions and during sessions, that's not going to do our industry any harm whatsoever. Asking people to sanitise coming into the building, making sure that we've got toilet doors open so people can easily go in and wash their hands, none of that is going to do us any harm as an industry. In fact, it would do us more good. Next question.
Okay, question for Caroline. As we look to get more clubs and groups into the sites in phase 2, we would be potentially looking to amend the terms and conditions for these groups. Does Right Directions have anything off the shelf for those additional COVID terms and conditions?
We haven't at the moment, but we will get something done for you this week and put it on our on our website. So we will do you as a literature or some guidance notes that will be general for swimming clubs, and then you can adapt them for your specific clubs. I think that's a really good idea. So thanks. I think that came from John. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Ian, a question on fogging machines, and I know that we've covered this on several occasions. Somebody's asking a question around fogging machines and saying that actually the WHO now are saying not to use them. What is our advice on fogging machines?
Well, I think our advice has always been that good basic cleanliness, making sure your touch points are cleaned using good soap and water detergent or proprietary cleaning equipment that's got an antiviral side in it, is the key control measure. It might produce a great customer impression if you say you're fogging, but the effectiveness of it, I'm really not sure, and no one's proved evidence to me to the effectiveness of it within the type of environments we're in. If somebody coughs and puts a droplet on a surface, it will clean it maybe for the minute that it's been fogged. But if somebody then comes along after someone's put a droplet on a surface and touches it, I think it's, you've got to weigh up the cost effectiveness as to what you think customer perception is. We've never advocated it.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Somebody's put a question up around the risk assessments for swimming lessons. Will they be on the Stitch platform? Yes, they will. They should be available this week sometime. Also, we are looking at the risk assessments that we'd already put up onto the Stitch platform, just to make sure that the guidance that came out last week is within those risk assessments. So those amendments and those additions.
And the procedure and mobilisation plans.
Yeah. So anything that we've produced, we will be reviewing, and it will be available on the Stitch platform. Ian, another question, and I don't think we've had this one before. Is there clarity on gyms being able to remain open 24 hours? There's certainly nothing in the guidance, but I don't see, so long as you have got the correct control procedures in place and you've got the ability to deliver first aid and monitor who's coming in to fit within the control measures that you would operate within an ordinary operating day, any reason why you can't operate for 24 hours. I would suggest that maybe, again, coming back to these gaps between classes or sessions to allow your building to breathe a bit, particularly if you've got good air handling systems. But there is no reason why you shouldn't extend your opening hours if it enables you to satisfy more of your customers, so long as you can enforce and control those control measures that you're going to need to add into your procedures.
So are we suggesting that if you are going to open for 24/7, there really should be some staff present?
I don't see how, well, personally, I can't see how someone would manage a 24/7 without some, and the controls that are going to need to be put in place without somebody on site.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, as predicted, there's a couple of questions in around ventilation and air conditioning. So the first one is and we haven't touched on this one today. Can you confirm whether or not air conditioning is to be used or the use of extractor fans instead? Yeah.
You get two types of air conditioning units. If you've got an air conditioning unit that is bringing fresh air in and tempering the air, that's fresh air coming in. You can use it. If you've got air exchange in your room and a separate air cooling, comfort cooling system that's just taking the air and turning it round and chilling it, that's acceptable. But if your room has solely got an air conditioning unit with no ability to put fresh air into it, I would be you shouldn't be using the air conditioning, but I would even question whether you should be using the room, depending on what activities are taking place in it. Particularly if you're going to be thinking of having a spin studio with lots of aerosol, lots of droplets being put into the atmosphere, you've really got to look at how you could mitigate that. And I can't personally see how that could be done.
Okay. So another question on ventilation. 20 litres per second is a heck of, per person is a heck of a lot more than any gym, as I would suggest. Can you please be absolutely clear whether this is the right interpretation and whether it is absolute requirement or just a guide?
It is a guide. It's a fairly strong guide because it's in black and white within the guidance. That's why we suggest you probably take advice of your heating and ventilation company, but that's why it ends up reducing your potential capacities within your buildings. We're not sure it's that easy to interpret, and hence why we think you need to get external advice on that. It does sound a lot.
Does the ventilation include staff in the total, as they will be in usable space?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Caroline, I think this one is potentially for you, and then Ian probably jump in because it's a safeguarding question. What is the view on spectators for our child-friendly sites, as there is not in the guidance? There is not in the guidance for chaperone drop-off. Is this desired in view of safeguarding, and do we need parameters for this?
That's a good question. Ian, you can start that one off. We've been debating spectators ever since we've started, haven't we?
Yeah,
and do with spectators and parents and
I think the more you can minimise it, the better. If you've got a facility that's capable of having people socially distanced, waiting for their children, and it isn't eating up your 20 litres per second per person too much, then maybe you do want to build them in. But I think if people are children are being dropped off, you need to think about the ages of those children and how you manage it and how you manage them through to the correct place. Clearly, if you can involve parents to, even if they take them in and then wait outside and come back in only a few minutes before, that might be one way of managing it.
The only thing that we would say to that one, though, is that if your procedures in place, so if children were in gymnastics classes or swimming lessons, if they needed the loo or they needed something, parents were called, that isn't going to be possible. Yeah. So risk assessments or extra, you're going to have to consider extra staff to be doing that. And those people obviously to be safeguarding trained and coaches and all the rest of it. So it's a bit of a can of worms, that one. But
and it's also, go on. It's also very difficult. Children will behave very differently to adults. So if you're taking every other locker out, if they've been in swimming lessons, they come back into shower, how you get them to follow that guidance and advice is going to be more difficult than with an adult. So, if you can build in capabilities to allow parents to come in to take some of those roles, then do, but make sure your risk assessments include those controls.
Lots of people we've spoken to aren't opening swimming lessons straight away. Lots of people aren't doing them straight away.
And to note that there is a couple of the big chains who we've seen emails from who are not allowing children into the leisure centres in phase one. That's private chains, obviously not local authority chains. Just to round off the 24-hour, somebody's put in the chat. So in other words, 24-hour opening, but staffed. So that's our interpretation, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah, absolutely.
24 hours, but they need to have a member of staff in the building. Yeah. Okay. Another question on clubs. When clubs start to return, it is good practice for us. Is it good practice for us to hold their risk assessments, or would it be acceptable for them to sign the booking form stating that they have these in place?
I personally think you probably should be asking them how they are going to comply with their own governing body's guidance and get them to make some form of commitment to that compliance. As we know, organisations that have got less than 5 employees don't have to have written risk assessments, but they do need in some way to prove it. So I think you need to ask them something that confirms that they are going to comply with the guidance from their own national governing body, and that it fits with yours. So you're going to need some form of paperwork from them to show how they intend to operate.
Okay. A question on rotating instructors, Ian. The guidance refers to consider limiting the number of classes that rotating instructors teach to minimise exposure. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite a sensible observation from government to have picked up and put in there that where you've got someone going between venues, you're potentially going to be taking a virus from one class to the next class, and those people are then with other staff. It's the same as bubbling shifts, so that you limit your exposure to losing all your staff because one member of staff has gone down with COVID. So I think either to give them more classes at one centre, but certainly to begin with, to limit the amount of facilities they're going round to, because you could find you've suddenly lost a vast track of classes and staff from a range of sites. So it's quite a sensible observation. It's not saying you have to stop it, but you just have to consider it within your risk assessments and how far you're going to allow someone to be multiple site based.
I think that applies to other staff as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Lifeguards who are multi-site, or
you might stop area. You might not see your area managers so much. They might all be visiting you virtually rather than taking the risk of virus from one site to another. There's always a silver lining in most things.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I'll take the next question. It's around soft play and trampoline areas. So if soft play areas not allowed to reopen as yet, can under fives visit trampoline inflatable parks? The answer is yes. It's more around the equipment in the soft play areas and the way that the children interact. Just on the back of that, there was a question that came in on the info around obstacle courses and slides and ninja tag obstacle courses. Our understanding is again that these are opened, but you do need to look at the equipment that is in there. For instance, I know that in some ninja tag obstacle courses there are ball ponds, so that area would have to be removed and the balls would have to be taken out. You may then need to look at the way the obstacle course or ninja tag area people move around, so you might have to do a one-way system, so you might not be able to have it functioning in exactly the same way, but you will be able to open it with some amendments. Okay, another question around 2 metre rule. With regards to the 2 metre rule versus the 1 metre plus with mitigations, we are able to implement mitigations such as non-facing one another, side by side or back to back, and screens between equipment. Both of these appear in the government guidance. Are these allowed to keep more kit in operational?
If I take that, I mean, so long as your mitigation works. I think side by side, I don't know whether that is in it. It certainly is from other guidance I've seen suggesting that pieces of kit in between others should be distanced. You've also got to allow for room for people to move between it. But it comes back to this overall volume of people you're allowed in terms of your air handling. So it may be you manage by putting screens and creating horrible boxes between people, to give yourself an awful lot more cleaning of equipment between it. But if you're not clearing the aerosol from the areas, you've got to think how you're going to leave space, time between people using each bit of kit to allow that to disperse, so that you're not introducing a different set of risks.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Another question for you, Ian. There's a question on the chat around vending machines, and I'm going to throw in arcade machines as well. So what advice is there for vending machine and arcade machines? Should they be out of use in the initial period?
Again, it could be baby steps, but I think we've all been out to shops, we've all been to petrol stations, we've all had to touch keypads to work things. I think so long as there's signage and hand sanitizers close by it, and if it's contactless, even better, because then there's no cash to handle. But there's no reason why vending machines should not be capable of being used.
Thank you, Ian. Trampoline park socks. I don't think we've actually discussed this as a team, but trampoline park socks, is it still okay for customers to reuse socks, or should they have a new pair each time?
Depends on how frequently they come and use you. If they use you every day, then maybe you'd want them to have more than one set of socks. But if there's a decent gap of 72 hours, there's no reason why they can't reuse the socks.
And they need to make sure that they're clean, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's another question linked to that, which I'd seen coming on the chat regarding gloves and masks. I
was just coming back to that one actually, because although it's related to trampoline, I don't think actually this question has been raised before. So I think that the question around should we ask people to wear masks has been raised, but not around how do we handle customers who want to use trampoline inflatable. But I think this can be opened up to other activities as well. So if they want to wear both masks and gloves, as you know, gloves are hot, and they may be worn on lots of occasions. So what's our advice on gloves and masks, Ian? I think there is two different questions there.
Yeah, I think so. In terms of masks, clearly if people want to wear them, I think we should just tell them what the World Health Organization and our own government advice is. I don't think we can insist that they don't wear them, but it's making them aware of what the risk is to themselves. So if they're happy to wear it and want to wear it, I don't think we should be compelling them not to. Gloves, again, it's like your hands. So long as they've sanitized it and they sanitize the gloves in between use, there's no problem if they want to keep gloves on. It's no different than your hands and making sure you sanitize those regularly. It's entirely down to them. I might think that's a bit silly, but that's if it gives the customer confidence to come back and pay you money, I don't see why you wouldn't be turning them away, so long as they adhere to the same rules that everybody else is, with bare hands, and sanitize them.
Okay, and I think we've come to the end of our questions. So before the time we anticipated, but I think we've covered most of the areas which we thought would be asked. Caroline, over to you. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, obviously people will probably have more questions over the next week when people have absorbed what's been said and they've really started to look at what they're doing in the buildings and staffing. So please make sure you book onto our clinic for next week. We're obviously still here to help. Ring us if you want to, or email us if you've got any questions between now and then. Keep your questions coming. And I think we're at the end, just as I lose my voice. Thank you all very much for listening. We will be recording it, and please can you leave some feedback? It'd be fantastic. Thanks again. Thanks, Ian, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you.